The sun dipped low across the wide plains, staining the sky in streaks of crimson and gold, and the air carried that restless hush that came before nightfall. Dust trailed behind the wagon wheels as the horses bolted forward, their eyes wild with fear, the wooden frame rattling under the force of their desperate gallop. Inside, the young woman clung to the side rail, her heart pounding, her grip slipping as every jolt threatened to hurl her into the hard, unrelenting earth below. She had never expected danger to find her so suddenly on what was supposed to be a simple journey, but fate had a way of testing hearts at the most unforgiving of times. The reins had snapped loose, the driver was thrown off somewhere behind, and now the wagon was nothing but a death trap careening recklessly toward the jagged rocks ahead. Panic rose in her chest, tears stung her eyes, and she whispered a prayer that if this was her end, it would come quickly. But across the open stretch of prairie, a lone cowboy had seen it all unfold, the chaos, the helplessness, the way she fought to hang on despite the odds. He pressed his spurs into his horse, leaning forward as wind tore against his face, determination burning hotter than the setting sun. This wasn't just about stopping a runaway team, it was about saving a life. The thundering hooves of his stallion echoed like war drums as he rode alongside the wagon, thus choking the air, sweat stinging his brow, his hand reaching out toward her. Their eyes locked for just a heartbeat, hers wide with terror, his fierce with promise. "Jump," he shouted over the roar of wheels and hooves, his voice steady even in the storm of madness. She hesitated, fear anchoring her, but the wagon lurched hard to the side, and the world tilted. Dangerously, she had no choice. With one final cry, she flung herself into the air, trusting a stranger more than she had trusted herself. And in that split second the world slowed. Strong arms caught her mid-fall, the weight of her body colliding against his chest as his horse carried them both away from the doom. She had escaped by mere inches. She clung to him, her heart hammering wildly, tears mixing with dust on her cheeks, and for the first time since the nightmare began, she felt safe. The wagon crashed in the distance, splintering into pieces, but neither of them looked back. All she saw was the rough, weathered face of the man who had risked everything to save her, a man with scars of his own etched into his skin, but whose eyes held a kind of quiet strength that silenced her fear. He slowed his horse, steadying her, his voice softer now. "You're all right, darlin', I got you." She trembled, not from fear anymore, but from the overwhelming realization that this cowboy had appeared at the exact moment her world was falling apart. She whispered her gratitude, voice breaking, and he gave her the faintest of smiles, the kind that spoke of more than words could carry. The prairie stretched wide around them, endless and untamed. Yet in that moment it felt as though they were the only two souls in existence, bound together by a twist of fate neither could deny. She had been tossed into danger, into chaos, into despair, but she had landed in something far more powerful: his arms, his courage, his unspoken vow that he would never let her fall again. And though neither of them knew what lay ahead, whether it was another storm, another trial, another battle, they both understood that some meetings were not accidents, but destiny's way of stitching two broken paths into one. And so, beneath the fiery glow of the sunset, as dust settled and silence reclaimed the land, a new story began, not of fear, but of hope, of strength, of a love forged in the heat of survival. She leaned against him, still trembling, and for the first time in her life, she believed that maybe, just maybe, she had found someone worth holding on to. And if you felt every heartbeat of this story, every breath of danger, every spark of that cowboy's courage, make sure to subscribe right now, because more stories of love, survival, and destiny are waiting, and you won't want to miss a single one. The night settled heavy across the plains, stars spilling like diamonds across the velvet sky, and the young woman found herself sitting by the glow of a campfire, her body wrapped in a blanket the cowboy had insisted she take. The terror of the runaway wagon still lingered in her bones, the sound of splintering wood and pounding hooves echoing in her mind. But every time she glanced across the flames at him, at the man who had saved her, her heart steadied. He moved with the quiet confidence of someone who had lived his life facing danger, his hands scarred from work, his eyes shadowed by stories he didn't speak of yet. She wanted to ask him everything: who he was, why he had been riding across the prairie at just that moment, what storms had shaped the steel in his voice, but instead she only whispered, Why did you risk yourself for me?" He lifted his gaze, the firelight flickering in his eyes, and after a long pause he answered, "Because no one deserves to face death alone." The words hit her deeper than she expected, stirring something that was more than gratitude, something that felt like recognition, as if she had known him long before this night. He passed her a tin cup of coffee, their fingers brushing for the briefest moment, and though the air was cool, her skin burned from the contact. Silence fell between them again, not heavy but alive, filled with unspoken questions and the restless beating of hearts that weren't ready to admit what they were beginning to feel. She told him her name, her voice soft, and he repeated it slowly, like he was memorizing it, carving it into the night itself. She found herself telling him more about the wagon, about the people she had been traveling with, about the life she had been running from, and he listened, not interrupting, not judging, just letting her words spill into the darkness. When she faltered, when her voice cracked under the weight of memories, he shifted closer, his hand brushing against hers, grounding her in a way she hadn't thought possible. And when she finally asked for his name, he gave it simply, like a gift. And suddenly he wasn't just the cowboy, but a man she wanted to know, a man whose name she wanted to speak again and again, until it became as familiar as her own heartbeat. The fire popped, sparks dancing into the sky, and for a moment they both smiled, two weary souls finding warmth in the middle of a wild, unforgiving world. But fate, as always, wasn't done testing them. From the darkness beyond the fire came the faint rustle of movement, the sound of footsteps, too careful, too deliberate. The cowboy's head snapped up, his hand instinctively going to the revolver at his side, his eyes narrowing. He motioned for her to stay low, the easy warmth of moments before hardening into sharp readiness. Outlaws, maybe, or worse, men who had seen the wagon crash earlier and decided to finish what fate had started. The woman's breath caught, fear threatening to choke her again. But this time she wasn't alone. This time she had someone who stood between her and the danger creeping closer. The cowboy rose, his silhouette tall and unyielding against the firelight, his voice a low growl meant for her ears alone. "Stay behind me." And in that instant, she understood something she hadn't before. Being caught in his arms had saved her life, but staying by his side might just save her soul. She gripped the blanket tighter, her eyes never leaving him. And though she didn't know what was about to happen, she knew one thing with absolute certainty. This was only the beginning of their story. The prairie stretched wide and merciless. The night held threats yet unseen. But between her fear and his courage, something stronger had been born. Something that no storm, no outlaw, no twist of fate could easily break. And as he stepped forward, revolver glinting in the firelight, she whispered a silent promise to herself that she would stand by him as fiercely as he had stood by her. Because sometimes destiny didn't come in quiet whispers or gentle touches. Sometimes it came in the chaos of a runaway wagon, in the strength of arms that refused to let you fall, and in the fire of a cowboy's eyes as he prepared to face whatever danger the night was about to bring. And if this story has you gripping your seat, if you can feel every heartbeat of this wild, untamed journey, don't forget to subscribe now, because the trail ahead is long, and the adventures waiting will steal your breath, break your heart, and mend it all over again.